G'day all you frothers, it's Will here from Flow Mountain Bike, and this next to me here is the brand new 2021 Trek Slash.
Will it pass the test? Blindfold in the cigarette. Last request. Better brace yourself. Expect the worst. Listen to the bass and check the verse. I got rhymes in abundance, style over substance. If it's what you like, take the mic from a thumbprint. Coughing up stuff off the cuff with the nuts stuck to make them out top.
Now this bike might not look all that different to the current Slash, but I can assure you that there have been some substantial updates to the frame design, suspension performance, and the handling on the trail. This bike is the top-end Slash 9.9, which we've been testing for the past month, and it is a really impressive bike. Now, the full review of this bike is over at flowmountainbike.com. We've put a handy link into the video description below. Click that, and that will take you through to the website to read the full review of this bike here. In this video, we'll be taking more of a brief overview of the new Slash. We'll be talking about some of the key updates to the platform, what models are in the lineup, and what attributes have really stood out to us from testing this bike over the last month. Now, the Slash remains as Trek's long travel 29er enduro bike. However, the new bike does get 10mm more travel at both ends. On the rear, we have 160mm of travel. That's provided by the ABP suspension design and a very special shock that has been co-developed between Trek and RockShox. More on that in just a bit. Up front on our test bike, we have a 170mm travel RockShox Zeb Ultimate, an absolutely brilliant fork. Along with the increased suspension travel, the geometry on the Slash is also being tweaked. As per the requests of Trek's EWS athletes, the Slash gets a little bit longer and a little bit slacker to handle the demands of modern enduro race courses. The head angle is nearly a full degree slacker at 64.1 degrees in the low setting, and the reach has been extended between 15 to 40mm per size. With the frame getting longer, Trek has shortened the stem length to 35mm, which comes on all 5 frame sizes, and that's to keep the steering consistent whether you're on a small or an extra large. Probably the biggest change on the Slash's geometry is the seat tube angle. That gets steeper by 2 full degrees. We're now looking at a 75.6 degree effective seat tube angle. Worth mentioning is that you can make that steeper. There's a MinoLink geometry chip in the back of the rocker linkage. Flipping that into the high position will steepen both the head and seat angles by half a degree, and it will also lift the bottom bracket by 7mm. There have been some big changes on the Slash's frame as well, including a move to a 34.9mm seat tube. There's a new Bontrager dropper post, and you get up to 200mm of travel on this dropper depending on the frame size. The Slash frame now also features Downtube Storage, which you'll find on both the carbon and alloy frames, and the bottom bracket no longer uses press end cups. This frame uses a good old-fashioned threaded bottom bracket. Now, as for the complete bikes themselves, there will be 4 Slash models coming into Australia for 2021. 2 of those bikes will feature alloy frames and the other 2 will feature carbon frames. Now, the range starts with the Slash 7, which will sell for 4,999 Australian dollars. Then we have the Slash 8, which will sell for $5,999. Then we have the Slash 9.8 XT, which will go for $8,499. And finally, the Slash 9.9 X01, which will sell for 10,999 Australian dollars. Now, with our test bike being the top-end 9.9 model, it comes with all the bells and all the whistles. Of course, we have a SRAM X01 Eagle 1x12 drivetrain. We've got powerful SRAM Code RSC disc brakes, Bontrager's new carbon fiber Line Elite wheelset, and 820mm carbon fiber handlebars, which we promptly chopped down to a much more tree-friendly 780mm. Now, confirmed weight for our large-size test bike here is 14.56 kilograms, and that's with the tyres set up tubeless. So as to how this bike rides on the trail, well, the biggest standout attribute to us was just how plush the suspension is on this bike. The rear shock on the Slash is a RockShox Super Deluxe Ultimate, but this is not an off-the-shelf shock. It is entirely custom for this bike. It uses Trek's through-shaft damper, but unlike the shock from the previous Slash, there is no more reactive valve. Instead, Trek has moved to a conventional shim stack valve on the main piston. And this is all about trading up a little bit of the efficiency of the old old bike in favor of more gravity-focused descending control. We've also got different adjusters on this shock, and the air spring has been updated as well, which you can tune both the positive and the negative air chambers with volume spacers. Coupled with the through shaft damper design, it takes very little force to get the suspension moving on this bike. The rear shock changes direction rapidly. It's very, very seamless, and it provides excellent grip in all conditions. The other standout attribute of this bike is just how stable it is in really steep and rough terrain. The geometry is dialed, the Zeb fork is absolutely brilliant, but it's really that ultra plush and ultra sensitive rear suspension design which gives this bike so much control. What really surprised us about the Slash though is that it isn't just a monster truck. In fact, this bike is inherently agile and playful on the trail. The back end is quite short with those 435mm chainstays, and while the suspension is super sensitive, there's fantastic spring support both front and rear, and that means your feet don't get lost in a big pile of overdamped syrup. It's quite responsive, and it also jumps really well. You've got plenty of suspension there and a really progressive end stroke to the travel to kind of help bring you back down to earth quite comfortably. We're also really impressed with just how quiet this bike is on the trail. The cables are really well managed all the way through the frame, and there's generous protection against chain slap and also rock strikes throughout. In particular, there are two big armor plates underneath the down tube. Now these are removable and replaceable, as well as protecting the down tube from rocks that get thrown up from the front wheel. The armor extends almost all the way up to the head tube, and that's useful if you're going to hoist this bike over the back of a tailgate on a shuttle day. We also really like the Downtube Storage on this frame. However, the width of the trapdoor is quite narrow. It's about 12mm narrower than the SWAT door that you'll find on a Specialized frame. And that does make it a little bit more awkward to fit stuff inside the Downtube, so it does require a bit more thought and consideration to packing those spares inside the frame. Now, while the geometry and riding position on this bike is absolutely fantastic, we do think the seat tube angle could be a lick steeper than it is. Now, it's certainly not a deal breaker on this bike because the adjustability is there. We slam the saddle all the way forwards on the rails, and that steepened the effective seat tube angle to closer to 78 degrees, which put us in a really good climbing position. Now, the effective top tube on this bike is quite long, so the cockpit is plenty roomy, even with the saddle slammed all the way forwards, and it's quite comfortable on the climbs. The suspension is quite active, so you will get more bob out of it on the climbs, but it does deliver fantastic traction. And combined with the low gearing and the low slung top tube, which gives you plenty of room to move around on, the Slash is actually a pretty good technical climber too, especially for a big travel enduro bike.
So close.
So what did we think of the new 2021 Trek Slash? Well, this is a really impressive bike. It packs a serious punch with a strong frame, newly slackened geometry, and a burly part spec, which give it a real thirst for high-speed drama. But that punch is delivered in a velvety smooth glove, thanks to the outrageously smooth suspension performance on this bike, which brings a level of comfort, control, and poise to the most chundery of trails. But what really surprises with this bike is just how versatile it is. Sure, you can let it steamroll the trail if you want it to, and it does a very good job of that. But it's also quite an agile and playful bike, and it's plenty willing to get airborne. Along with the respectable climbing behavior, the Slash is just a really good all-rounder. Now, if you want to read more about our experience with the new Trek Slash, make sure you go to flowmountainbike.com. We have put a handy link into the video description below, and that will take you through to the full review of this bike right here. Now, if you've got any questions for us about the new Trek Slash, make sure you drop them into the comments below and we'll do our best to answer them for you. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you do that right now because we've got a lot more videos coming your way in the very near future. Otherwise, that's it from me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video review, and we'll see you next time. Tooroo!
Deliberation, burden of proof. Cast your bets, will it pass the test?